40,000 years ago, a woman gives birth in the dark, and then she keeps giving birth. A second cry. 2 children where the group expected 1. The other adults go quiet, not with joy, with calculation. Because everyone in that circle already knows the truth her body hasn't caught up to yet. There is only enough milk for 1. And someone is about to decide which child sees morning. The oldest impossible choice our species ever made, and the reason you're so strangely fascinated by twins to this day. 1 case file, 1 buried instinct dragged into the light. Open the evidence room, subscribe. Let's get into the evidence. Here's what you have to understand before we open the first exhibit. For almost all of human history, a newborn wasn't a guarantee. It was a gamble the entire group placed against the food supply. A mother could nurse 1 infant. Maybe she could carry that infant while the band moved across open country chasing herds and water. 2 infants broke the math. 2 mouths, 1 milk supply. 2 bodies to carry, 2 arms to do it with. In a world where falling behind the group meant death, twins weren't double the joy. They were double the risk and half the odds. So the question this file investigates isn't whether ancient humans loved their children. They did. The question is, what love does when love isn't enough to keep both of them alive? We'll follow 3 pieces of evidence. Here's the first piece of evidence, and it's written into your biology. A human mother does not produce milk on demand like a tap. Her body produces roughly enough for 1 growing infant. 2 newborns nursing at once meant 1 of 2 outcomes. Both children slowly starved, weakening together, or 1 child got the milk and 1 did not. Ancient humans didn't have formula. They didn't have another nursing mother to spare. Not reliably. Not in a band of 30 people already stretched thin. So across the world, in the Amazon, in parts of West Africa, in the Arctic, in Aboriginal Australia, anthropologists found the same grim pattern recorded again and again. When twins were born and the group could not feed both, 1 was not kept. The decision was usually made fast, usually by the women, usually before the bond had time to set. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. This wasn't cruelty. Read the accounts and you find the opposite. Grief, ritual, mothers who carried the loss for the rest of their lives. It was triage, the coldest kind of mathematics run by people who had no other option, in a world that gave them no margin for error. They weren't choosing between a good outcome and a bad one. They were choosing between losing 1 child and losing both. Sit with that. That's not a monster's choice. That's a choice the apocalypse handed to people exactly like you. But food was only half of it. Because in a lot of these cultures, the second baby wasn't seen as a mouth to feed. It was seen as something far more dangerous. Quick one. If this file is getting under your skin, that reaction you're feeling is exactly what we investigate here. Subscribe and stay on the case. Because in a moment, this stops being about ancient mothers and starts being about the parent you'd actually become if the math ever came for you. Now, Exhibit B. Here's the second piece of evidence. In culture after culture that never had contact with each other, twins triggered the same response. Not just fear of hunger, fear of the supernatural. Think about it through their eyes. You live in a world with no biology, no genetics, no understanding of how a body splits 1 pregnancy into 2. From inside that world, twins are an impossibility that just happened. 2 identical people. 1 soul in 2 bodies, or worse, a normal child. And something that came with it, an intruder. A spirit that slipped in alongside the real baby. So in many groups, twins weren't just a feeding problem, they were an omen. Some cultures believed 1 twin was human and 1 was a curse, and the terror was that you couldn't tell which. Others believed the mother had been touched by something inhuman to produce 2 at once, and she was cast out along with the children. The fear wasn't of the babies, it was of what the babies meant. And here's where the official story cracks. Because if twins were universally feared, universally a threat, they should have been universally erased. Every culture, every time. But that's not what the evidence shows. Hold on to that, because it breaks the whole pattern wide open. Here's the third piece of evidence, and it's the one that reverses everything. For every culture that feared twins, there was another that did the exact opposite. They didn't kill twins. They worshipped them. The Yoruba of West Africa. The people with one of the highest twin birth rates on Earth came to revere twins as sacred, carving figures to honor them, believing they brought fortune and protection to the whole family. Across the ancient world, the founding myths are full of twins. Romulus and Remus raised by a wolf, founding Rome. Twin gods, twin heroes, twin creators showing up in the mythology of peoples who never met. Same biology, same impossible event, opposite verdicts. So which group was right? The one that feared or the one that worshipped? And here's the part that should change how you see this entire file. They were both reacting to the same hidden variable, and it was never the twins. It was surplus. Look at where twins were feared, and you find groups living on the edge, no margin, no stored food, a band already one bad season from starving. Look at where twins were worshipped, and you find the opposite, groups with enough. Enough food, enough hands, enough surplus to absorb 2 new mouths instead of 1. The Yoruba didn't revere twins because they were spiritually purer than the cultures that feared them. They revered them because they could afford to. Twins didn't threaten their survival, so twins became a blessing. Same impossible birth. The only thing that changed was whether the group had enough to keep both alive. That's the verdict this file returns. When twins were born, ancient humans did not have one reaction. They had the reaction their surplus could pay for. Fear and worship were never two different instincts. They were the same instinct. Survival math. Wearing 2 different masks, depending on what was in the food store that winter. And you still run it. You don't allocate love evenly across everyone in your life. You allocate it the way your ancestors allocated milk. By what you can afford. Your time, your energy, your attention go to what your surplus can carry, and quietly away from what it can't. You like to believe that's a choice you're making. It's the same calculation a mother ran in the dark 40,000 years ago, with 2 children and only enough for 1. The executioner and the worshipper were never 2 kinds of people. They were the same animal, doing the same math, reading the same empty or full food store, and calling the answer either a curse or a gift. You come from the ones who survived the choice. Every one of them. Before you go, drop a comment with the one thing in this file that surprised you most. I read every one, and they shape the next case. If this file changed how you see your own instincts, the next one will too. There's another file waiting in the evidence room. Subscribe. Stay on the case. The investigation continues.